It's 1936, and a truck has parked itself outside of Leah Knur's small department store in Aurich, Germany. And it stayed there for 5 days. The side of the truck reads, "Kauf nicht in Judilchen werden Haufern," don't shop in Jewish stores. A few weeks later, Jewish children are barred from attending schools, and within a year, Leah, my great-grandmother, walked onto the dock of the SS Washington holding 4 suitcases, 3 children, and the desperate hope of a new life more than 5,000 miles away. As she approached the ship, a Nazi soldier stopped her to check her bags for money and hidden valuables, unaware of the coins, jewelry, and food sewn carefully into her children's coats. Leah watched as the man rifled through her bags, tossing her belongings left and right, and when he had finished, my 5-foot-tall Jewish great-grandmother, as stubborn as ever, looked up at him and said, "You took it out, you put it back." And he did. And that is the story of Jews throughout history, enduring persecution but standing strong, persevering no matter the cost or the dangers. And after some time, when Leah finally arrived in Baton Rouge with her family ready to start a new journey, she joined her husband, Eric Sternberg, who had arrived about a year prior, to grow their newly bought men's clothing store, Gotcha's. Now, living in America could never equate to Nazi Germany, but every day they experienced the struggles that came with the territory, living as German Jewish immigrants in a strange land with a foreign language. But keep in mind, this is mid-1900s America, and discrimination is certainly not limited to Jewish immigrants. Recalling their experiences in Germany, the Sternbergs made it their life's mission to combat the very hatred that destroyed their lives across the ocean, utilizing every resource available to them to fight persecution on all grounds. They became heavily involved in the Baton Rouge bus boycott, provided employee documentation for refugee immigrants fleeing persecution in their homelands, and actively spoke out against discrimination at the hands of the KKK and the White Citizens Council, all while feeling understandably othered by this Southern American community. Meanwhile, Gotcha's, the Sternberg family department store, my family's department store, soon expanded to more than 20 stores across multiple states. And that is their legacy. A family of Jewish immigrants creating a life, making their mark in America despite the hardships they faced. In the 90 years since Leah stepped off that ship, things must have changed, right? If Leah were to arrive today, almost a century later, what life would she step into? What culture have we as Americans created to welcome or to push away families like hers, like mine, like so many in this room? According to the Anti-Defamation League, incidents of anti-Semitic hate are up 67% since 2021, with 3,717 reported incidents in 2022 alone. The historian and current ambassador for the Special Envoy to Monitor and Combat Anti-Semitism, Dr. Deborah Lipstadt, has called anti-Semitism the autoimmune disease of our society. It's grounded in century-old lies and stereotypes since the idea of Jews killing Jesus, and it's only grown since. Today, anti-Semitism is just as prevalent, if not more so, as it ever was, and it comes from all directions, the right, the left, the middle. This is because it's notoriously adaptable, used by different groups throughout history to blame Jews for every variety of hardship and tragedy. This type of hate, however, is unique because Jews are simultaneously blamed for being too strong and too weak. And today, anti-Semitism in America, in fact, American hate in general, is grounded in a core democratic right: freedom of speech. The U.S. Constitution's First Amendment reads, "Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech," and on the surface, it's one of the most important and appealing aspects of American democracy, even instilling itself as a core value in democracies globally. However, this largely unregulated freedom ultimately poses dangers to minority ethnic, religious, and racial groups across our country. Let's go back just a few years. It's the small town of Whitefish, Montana, 2017, and it's become the center of controversy and turmoil, all stemming from a debate between local Jewish realtor Tanya Gersh and Richard Spencer, well-known white nationalist in the area. The dispute revolved around a valuable commercial building owned by Sherry Spencer, Richard Spencer's mother, which had become the center of controversy and turmoil, protest, all stemming from this debate. A building which Ms. Gersh was offering to sell to reduce backlash on the Spencer family due to her son's more white supremacist ideas. Soon, Ms. Spencer publicly accused Ms. Gersh of harassment and threats, allegations which Ms. Gersh denied. The situation only escalated when Andrew Anglin, a notorious white supremacist from Ohio and founder of the neo-Nazi website The Daily Stormer, saw the opportunity to rally his followers in support of the Spencers. He exhorted his followers online to take action to defend Miss Spencer, and within 48 hours, Ms. Gersh received hundreds of text messages, notes, emails threatening her. Her voicemail filled up several times a day. Hateful comments about her appeared on real estate websites. Homeowners were afraid to list with her. A Jewish woman who'd lived in and contributed meaningfully to the whitefish community her entire life, yet whose livelihood was ravaged by thousands of online strangers who'd never met her, but who were rallied by the words of one powerful man, which, while free, were undeniably dangerous. The internet is changing the face of communication. In the US, the web has drastically altered how we receive our news, talk to friends, live our everyday lives. Its decentralized nature allows it to function as a place for amateurs and professionals alike to create and share ideas, information, videos, art, music, and for that, it's a valuable tool. But in spite of, or perhaps because of its democratic nature, the internet is also populated with websites, many anonymous, dedicated to inciting hatred against particular ethnic, religious, racial, sexually oriented groups. Women, Black Americans, Asian Americans, Jews, Muslims, members of the LGBTQ+ community. Media outlets estimate a 69% rise in active online hate groups from 2000 to 2012. This increase is due in large part to fear and anger surrounding issues of non-white immigration, the sluggish economy, and yes, the re-election of a Black president. The most prominent online hate comes as identity-based harassment, which negatively impacts the safety of already marginalized groups in digital spaces. Minorities are targeted online through isolated, generalized attacks which have potentially detrimental effects to their lives offline. In a 2023 survey by the Southern Poverty Law Center, 59% of Black Americans reported being harassed online due to their race, a nearly 50% spike from just the previous year. It's this right of free speech that can too quickly turn hateful and often comes without consequences to online creators. However, mainstream technology companies have taken minimal approaches to addressing the problems of hate and harassment on their sites because, frankly, their business models thrive off of them. The more hate that exists on a platform, the longer users stay, and the higher the advertising dollars, creating a vicious cycle of hate and greed. Substantive regulation may finally be coming, but for women, people of color, religious and sexual minorities, it is long overdue. Still, it's important to consider how political speech works in the world outside the internet. Sitting alone in front of a blank screen, it's easy to get caught up in the worst parts of ourselves, not thinking of real-world consequences and then normalizing that potential for hateful behavior. It's become so commonplace online that that very hatred has seeped into the real world. Especially when it comes to politics, we inherently seek out others with similar beliefs because we tend to avoid conflict and confrontation. Those echo chambers we create for ourselves ensure that we don't receive any diverse opinions, instead reinforcing those same stale beliefs that we already had. In such environments, human nature is to take the validation of those around us as the go-ahead to express, even amplify our extreme, hateful views without fear of challenge or criticism. As a society, we need to diversify our circles and learn to act respectfully despite differing beliefs. It's certainly not easy, but that's what makes the world go around. It's the constant exposure to new and contrasting perspectives that allows us to form grounded, educated opinions, and in turn contribute our own perspective, and only then can we create real change. I know for some of us, this all seems like a far-off problem. I mean, we are fortunate to grow up in this community where we may not see the direct effects of hate as frequently as others. And it may feel like we can't do anything to change it. Most of us aren't even 18 yet and can barely contemplate the idea of stepping onto our college campus, buying our first apartment, starting our futures. But I'm here to tell you that it is our job, and not to sound overly simplistic, but it is our job to think. To think about the words we say, the posts we make, and to reflect on the implications of those words and the actions that follow. Because hate is an epidemic. It's pervasive, it's contagious, and it has the very real capacity to tear at the fabric of our society, and it will continue to spread until we can learn to use our words not to tear down those who are different, but to celebrate those differences that make America the land of the free, to ensure that all people are protected, not just their speech. I think back to Leia standing on that German dock, watching her belongings being raided by a Nazi who had the power to send her and her family home, or much worse, but she stood strong in the face of hate. She did it for herself, for her family, and for me. She took a stand in Germany so that we could have a life in America, and yet so many in this country experienced that hatred almost a century later. But we don't need to be stuck here doing nothing. We're not helpless to accept it because that story needs to change. And that change starts here with us.